I think so much of that for me is through humor. I find that is an easier way to go to than crying together. It's like to find a way to laugh. And I find so much of my day functioning in that way of just trying the way that I've connect with friends and loved ones. It just, is through making each other laugh. The very first film that I made was very straight drama. And another fellow director was like, it's funny that that's what you did because that's not like how you spend your day at all. Like it doesn't reflect at all how your life is. Like we're always laughing.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, tragic circumstances bring three estranged sisters together in director Azazel Jacobs' drama, His Three Daughters. The film tells the story of Katie, Christina, and Rachel, who reunite for the first time in many years at their dying father's New York City apartment. Over the course of 3 claustrophobic days, the sisters unearth past grievances, traumas, and hang-ups as they learn to coexist before their father's departure. In addition to His Three Daughters, Jacobs' other directorial credits include the feature films French Exit, The Lovers, Mama's Man, and Terry, as well as episodes of the television series Mozart in the Jungle, Doll and M, and Sorry for Your Loss. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Jacobs spoke with director David Zellner about filming His Three Daughters. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, David.
I love this movie so much, and yeah, I don't know. I'm so excited to get to talk to you about it. I've known Aza for, I don't know, 15 or 20 years, somewhere around there. We met at Sundance and Cine Vegas and some other festivals, and it's such a great thing when you first start going to festivals with your films, and you meet other filmmakers that are, kind of coming up in the same time you are, and then seeing, it's been so fun going back over the years, when making the rounds again with films, and especially with this one. It's a real treat to get to talk.
Thank you. Yeah. And we've been on a similar cycle in terms of when our films. So like, I feel like we kind of hit festivals throughout these past 15 years. We've been on a few years in the same time. So
that's true. Yeah. That's great. Well, I guess if we want to start from the top with where you, like, how this film came, the idea behind this came, and why now?
It is a very personal story. It is something that I've found extremely confusing just going through it in my own life with my own parents. It's something that I'm still living through. And I couldn't make sense of it. And I thought something that I can understand, or at least I have a sense of control, and at least an ability to potentially control, with film, bringing that to this would be it would be an escape in a lot of ways for me. It would be a way to deal with it, and also just like have a true escape. Bringing something so joyful as filmmaking towards this other process that has been the opposite of that.
Yeah. Did it happen kind of organically, where you just found these ideas coming in your head, or?
Yeah, the way that I'm somebody that gets up quite early and walks through the streets of New York City and just writes random notes. Things would always begin in terms of just like my personal life with just dealing with parents around 9 or 9:30. So I had like this window of 6 to 9 where things were extremely calm, and I would just be able to, before the storm, like just have this window each morning. And I was writing how I was feeling, also just different ideas for potential stories. And then one day I really realized that, these very disparate stories are actually disparate characters living in the same roof and colliding in that way. That gave me an umbrella to kind of approach these different feelings that I was feeling, but embodied by these different sisters.
And compared to your the other films which you wrote, as well. What, was the writing process similar, because this is more personal? It came around in a different way.
My writing process has been similar in the way that I write random things that I don't know if it's going to be going anywhere for quite a long time. And then suddenly I can write very, very quickly once I understand how they connect with each other. So that was similar in terms of just like writing forward. I sat down and wrote that first thing that Katie says. I was very excited by the idea of having characters that express themselves. And that was very new for me. I've always like drawn to writing about characters that are holding everything in, but I wanted to see what it was like to just say everything and just jump in the middle of the story and not have opening credits and just kind of get right into the conflict. And for everybody to just define themselves like, okay, this is who this type is. This is this type is. And then how can that slowly unravel and reveal itself? So it flowed, very, very kind of quickly and easily and fun. It was a fun thing to write.
You know, I love the economy of the storytelling with it, and just the way. I mean, just kick off. There's a white background behind her. You don't really have any context of what's going on, but it's so relatable, and she's so expressive of what she's going through that you know, and then as each sister, you know, as we're introduced to each sister, you immediately, I don't know, with moments get their whole dynamic, and it was just so efficient in the way. And then they're set up for the whole movie, as far as I was concerned. Like, you immediately know their personalities and then their dynamic with one another. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it was a neat way for me to just kind of lay everything out so quickly. So wasn't something that would kind of slowly reveal itself. And people weren't holding their cards back other than Rachel so much. But that kind of abrasiveness was something that I felt was a way for me to convey how the true life experiences felt, in terms of just feeling so far away and then suddenly being so close and so in my face, and like, oh, we're here now. It felt so far away, and that felt representational in a certain way of that.
That's cool. And it really speaks to the tone. And I love the tone with all your work is so dialed in, and it's great because it has so much heart, but it's never like sentimental or maudlin, and which is, I think, is such a tricky sweet spot to be in, but it's the most gratifying for me because it's incredibly relatable on a human level, but it's never forced. And that doubles down and makes it all the more relatable because of that. It's not a didactic or kind of forcing some point, but it's giving these kind of intersections of relatability that then people can kind of bring their own experience to. And, you know, we're a similar age, and I know so many people going through similar, things to you. And so it was great to find it. I don't know, just so relatable, but there was never, it was never like forcing a message or anything. Just the relatability was kind of the most important thing, it seemed.
I think so much of that for me is through humor. I find that is an easier way to go to than crying together. It's like to find a way to laugh. And I find so much of my day functioning in that way of just trying the way that I've connect with friends and loved ones. It just is through making each other laugh and find, like, that's how we say, oh, this is what's going on. Can you believe this? But it's usually through laughing.
Yeah.
And that was something that the very first film that I made was very, very straight. I thought that's like very straight drama. And another fellow director was like, it's funny that that's what you did, because that's not like how you spend your day at all. Like, it doesn't reflect at all how your life is. Like, we're always laughing. And he had also made a first film that was very, very, very serious, and we're going to say it all, and that was eye-opening to go like, oh yeah, I'm going to try to reflect a little bit more of what my day-to-day is, which is trying to find some humor through things, even if they're painful.
Yeah. I think with both your with people's families and just the close friends and whatnot, I think like humor is such like a shorthand to cutting through the bullshit, basically. And so I love the way you did that here, because it was, I don't know, and the way these things go, where from one moment to the next, there's just from the absurdity of life, there's something really tragic you're contending with. And then the humor that comes from that as a way to kind of deal and relate with one another with the situation you're in.
Yeah. It's I think that the big moments, at least in my life, they're so shocking that they are funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, that's what it is. There's like, I can't but see the other side of it, being like, I can't, it's the way that I can understand things.
It's almost like a survival technique. Like maybe like we evolved that way. Humor evolved as a tool for survival.
Yeah. It's a lot easier for me than crying. Yeah, it's a lot quicker. Just a lot. It's something that we're crying, like it just feels like it builds up and then suddenly it's there, where laughing is just like something and it's right there always to.
Yeah. And you can't force it, because especially with something when it's people that you're close to, you're all going through the same thing. It's just this instant shorthand in terms of dealing with the situation, that you all immediately have this, bond through.
It was a huge factor in writing it for these actors. I wrote the script maybe about 10 or 15 pages in. I started realizing I was writing for not only, Lizzie and Carrie and Natasha, but also Javon. And I felt that, yes, I knew that they're incredible actors and they'd be able to handle the drama, but they also understood that the humor was an essential part. And I just knowing them enough to see like, oh, they would get that side of this without playing it so much, but that it'd be something, it would be something tangible that we could connect on.
Yeah. And so that's interesting. So by page 15 or whatever, you knew who you wanted. And then did you start kind of tailoring the roles to those actors, or it was just kind of an inspiration to get going?
The biggest thing that made me sit down to write was chasing this sense of what looming death had on time, which was very, very strange to me. Like I could not understand how time was working in this way when you know something is going to happen, and you go from completely not wanting and dreading it to ultimately waiting for it to happen, and that shift, and just how it was like a fantastical effect on time in a way that I had another ever experienced, because at the same time, like every second matters, because there's going to be there's going to be an ending, which really doesn't happen so much in life, where something is clearly going to shift. You don't know exactly when, but it's absolutely guaranteed to happen. So sitting down, trying to chase down that rhythm, I wrote, especially with that first monologue with Katie, it was much more just hearing a beat to it. And yes, there's also like this idea that there's this metronome in the back with this heartbeat monitor, but it was truly just trying to hear rhythms. And then at some point I realized like, oh, Carrie could handle that rhythm really well. And Lizzie could do this and Natasha could do that. So I could hear them more than anything. And that always stayed that way. And then with the idea, knowing that, wow, if they respond to this, they are also going to bring something completely that only they could, And
what was the process for once you finished it? Had you worked with them or you're friends with all them?
I had worked with Lizzie and Javon on a show, her show, Sorry for Your Loss. And so we had stayed connected and continued to talk about working with each other, and just she was somebody and same with Javon. Carrie Coon I met through Tracy Letts, who I had worked with previously on The Lovers and French Exit, and just loved her work. And also just when I saw The Nest, I was like, oh, this is somebody I really was really very much wanted to work with. Natasha, I just kind of obviously I was more than anything a fan, but enough that I was able to reach out to them, all four of them, directly afterwards and say, hey, I've written something for you in mind. I know that's odd, like to just say that, but it's true. This is like, you were in my mind this whole time. And if you respond to this, I printed out the script. I wanted to send it to them so that it would exist in this way that wasn't going to be a PDF, just was going to exist kind of outside. It's just going to give them a tone of the type of film that it was going to hark back into, like films that were very common in the 90s. That was just like, I'm just going to try to control every aspect of this. So I promise that we will shoot this on an actual location in New York City. We will shoot this on film. We will shoot this as much in order as possible. I'll have Final Cut, and that this will be our film. Like we'll start and end with us. We will move in tandem. I will let you know each step as things form together. But let's like hold on to each other now as fellow filmmakers and then just figure out when could we do this if they responded. And also I told them who I was simultaneously sending it to, with the idea just that I could guess that they were going to be fans of each other's, because they all very different actors, but approach the craft in a similar, very, very serious way.
That's cool. Yeah. And I thought they were so they seem so perfect for all those roles, but at the same time, they were doing things that I hadn't personally seen any of them do before. So I thought that was really interesting that you were inspired enough, by those individual actors while you were writing, but then you also knew you were going to get something you hadn't seen them do before.
I think with all the actors that I've worked with, the clearest thing that always comes across to me is like their hunger to try things and to go someplace that they hadn't potentially go someplace. And so that was the obvious thing, is that they all felt like they were excited by what they do, mm-hmm. and they were looking for potential other ways to express themselves in terms of like, I knew that also they loved film. And so the idea of shooting on film and shooting in this way, shooting in order, taking advantage of the limitations that we had would actually be truly appealing to them. It was a selling point that, we were going to be shooting 17, we shot 17 days. So we'd be moving very, very quickly. No moving equipment, locations, not losing an hour and a half every day to do something. It was really just like, we were going to shoot scenes and shoot them through each day. And then to shoot in order was this kind of magnificent gift that you can only do if the film is small enough.
Yeah. That's incredible. That seemed, that almost never ever happened. So it's incredible but it seemed essential for this film.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I meant working with the light, working with the neighbors, cause we weren't going to be shooting throughout the night. So we were shooting in a real apartment, one unit out of, it's a block of buildings. So there's about 900 units, but the production office was the basement of the building. So just figuring out how to use elevators, but it really meant that everybody was staying in this apartment all day long. There was no reason to really send actors away for some long period of time. Yeah. It created a rhythm very, very quickly.
That's great. And also, I guess it didn't take much setup each morning, right? You could just kind of stop where you left off.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And very early on, you start realizing how you can potentially light or tweak lights to each area, so there's a certain rhythm that you're chasing. Okay, the sun's coming over here and it ends at this place. But it also meant that if we were shooting something nighttime, that it would really be the light that would dictate the order of who we were shooting with, where we were starting. So, okay, we could black out the window and know that by the time we get over to whoever's sitting on this side, let's say like Javon comes down the hallway, like we could shoot this whole coverage on this side, knowing that when we get over to this side, it would be nighttime. But really utilizing that, which was a cool way to, like, the choice was made through something other than ourselves.
Yeah. Just kind of adapting as you.
But maybe that's always the case in production. You're always kind of adapting to how this was, but this was a kind of it felt helpful. Mm-hmm. It always felt like something to lean on. Okay, where are we starting? Well, we know we have to be looking this direction because of the light and, utilizing it that way.
And did that have was there latitude, like where you would finish each day, or there
was only the father scene was the only scene that we shot over 2 days. Every other day it was like we were definitely going to complete the full scene.
Okay.
And then shooting film meant that we were also limiting ourselves in terms of, we had to be very, very specific about the coverage and how we were going to do that beforehand. And since I knew I was going to be editing as well, like that was a long conversation I had just in terms of myself trying to chase down this rhythm that I was talking about, which is like, how many cuts do I need to convey the sense that time is either moving very, very quickly or not?
Yeah, I love the editing. Have you edited all your stuff, or is this?
No. I've worked with a wonderful editor for many, many years, and I will continue to. But in this case, it was like I could not figure out how to say what I was chasing. And I felt like I just needed to go straight from whatever I was thinking to my hands, but also just because of what I was dealing with my parents, the idea of going into a room by myself felt like such a refuge. It was such a nice thing to have a place that I could dictate my hours. I could go before doctor's appointments or on the other side of things or whatever it was that was going on that day. Cause it's so random what changes. It shifts all the time. The idea of creating an editing schedule that was like 9 to 6 or whatever it wasn't going to happen.
That's cool. No, I love the rhythm of it. Was so just with every aspect of the filmmaking and the screenplay, everything was so efficient. And I just, as I was watching it, it was like just the right amount of everything to keep it moving. And and like just from the opening, like when you first, it holds on Carrie for a good while, and then when it finally cuts to Natasha, it was the perfect time. I just like instinctively just felt like, oh, that the perfect time to cut. And then when you bring Elizabeth Olsen in, like it just felt like you were very dialed into this rhythm. And that kind of, for some reason, like shooting 3 people at a table seems like the most terrifying thing to me in terms of keeping it interesting and knowing how to, how it's motivated and everything. So did you evolve the way you shot the film as you went, or was it all kind of mapped out in your head?
This one much more mapped out than anything before. It was the first time I've ever done a paper edit of the film before shooting, which was like a color coded paper, just so that I could feel like, okay, this would create this type of rhythm if we went from A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B to C to whatever that shot was. And I know I need 3 shots or I need 4 shots to get that type of that rhythm. Even if I was going to not stick to it or not in the other side, it gave me a map, like a rhythm map that I was chasing that I could then show the actors during rehearsal, hey, this is how it's going to go. And there's not going to be traditional coverage. Like I'm not going to figure out whose scene this is or what the scene is later in the edit room. Like I'm just going to go in there with this idea that this is how the scene should be, and hopefully it's true. But there will be no, there's no over the shoulders for a long time. There's nothing. They don't share frames for a very long time. It had a lot to do with just trying to treat this apartment as an equal character, knowing that we're going to spend so much time in there. How can I dole it out in the same way that the characters are slowly doling out who they actually are, not just their presentation of themselves in the way that the film begins, where they're just like, I'm going to give you the character that you think I am. So that's who it is. And it's the same thing. Okay, there's a slice over here we get a slice of them. We get the idea of the records behind. We're starting to get a sense of the father bit by bit. We're getting an idea of how these rooms connect or how they don't connect, in the same way that we're slowly getting an idea of how these sisters could connect or not.
That's weird. Yeah. And it felt so natural, just the way you tease bits of information which just added to the complexity of their dynamic as it went. And so it just kept it constantly engaging for me with this underlying tension, and you almost like a ticking clock sort of thing because of the way you had it structured. And then when I really loved your choice with the the presence of the father, how you saved that for it, because it was just this. It felt like it focused on it. I felt like if you'd seen the dad all along, it would have diminished their relationship and their individual traits and everything. So I thought it was so interesting that choice. Where you get a sense of it in the background, you're hearing the heart monitor, and you're seeing through the crack in the door, and it really kept it focused where it needed to be. What was that by design from the start when you're writing it, or how did it was?
I've always felt pretty uncomfortable with depicting certain things in film, and whether I could do it truthfully. And definitely a death scene was like one of those where I felt like, could I do this justice in the way that it was how I've experienced it, like what that truly looks like. Could I do that in an honest way? And it felt like I didn't know if I could, and didn't want to. I didn't want to go into that room myself. It was just something that I related to in the way that Rachel is. Like, I just did not want to go in there and see what that looked like. But so I set up that rule, which is like, oh, we're just never going to go into that room, with also thinking that we'd never see the father. But it really was through the writing of it that once I got to this area where they went in there, I felt like, oh, I saw the sisters bringing him out there. And then it worried me because I felt like I was breaking a rule. Like I was making something that was like a very clean, neat film. And now suddenly it wasn't. And I was like, oh, going into something very outside of these rules that I set up. That excited me. It worried me. And then ultimately, I just really wanted to hear what this father had to say. And it was a way for me to kind of express a fantasy, just a desire. First off, to express a truth, I think, about film, that like we can depict fantasies and they could feel very true and be meaningful for us. And also this idea that we could have some sort of closure where we get to say these things that were, I love you and I'm sorry, and here's something very particular about me that maybe I couldn't express to anybody else, but us as an audience get to hear it. It was a way also to really get a sense of what his presence, once it's gone, like we understand what's gone. It's not just an empty chair, but we got to see what he was truly like taking up that space.
Yeah, I thought it was such an interesting choice because, yeah, the whole movie, I know once you get the rhythm of the film, it's like, okay, we're not going to see the dad. And so by the time when that's like, I don't know, 20 minutes to the end or whatever, when he comes out, it was like like a tension that came with that. And I thought that was, it was so earned. And then I loved the way it turned into the kind of fantasy element. And I don't know if it was, for me, it felt like it was kind of like all of their fantasy in terms of like quote unquote closure, which you never actually get. And so I love that it was like this perfect balance of fantasy and reality where we, and through that, they all got, some form of closure, but it felt, but then it was like closure to a degree, but then also it was, but not all buttoned up in a way that would have felt phony, And so, I just love, and then I love, so again, like to point to your editing, I love when it felt like if his monologue had gone on like a couple seconds more, it would have taken away from it. And it just felt like, oh, you got it at the right, when he's seeing himself and everything, it just felt like it was, yeah, just so perfectly tying it back together.
Thank you for that. I would say that I did one rough cut screening where I had fellow filmmakers that I very much respect. And that scene was extremely divisive. And there was a very strong a few vocal critics of just saying like, take that scene out, you'll have a great film. And also like, this idea that, oh, if a scenes can cut together without a scene, that means that you don't need that scene. There's always that thing. Mm-hmm. But I desperately wanted that scene. But the truth is that I couldn't sleep that night at all. And then I wound up going to the edit room with Diaz, who's my partner and fellow filmmaker and collaborator and producer of this film. And she sat in the edit room with me and she was like, we looked at it and it was probably about 3.5 minutes longer. And she said, well, when I said like how important it was for me to hold on to this, like I needed this just in my own life, I needed to hear this. She was like, well, then you have to go through this like frame by frame by frame, and every frame has to answer that thing that you need. It has to give you that thing. It can't be just because you wrote this or like this is an arc of this like, at every moment. And so that was the only way so those people that were saying that I should lose it were right. It was that version of that scene was completely not working. Mm-hmm. But going through it and really getting it down to where I think it is, like suddenly I was like, oh, you know what? Even if this is going to not work for some people, this fully is like says what I truly needed in my own life.
Yeah. Well, I feel like in the end you got, by going through that painful process of figuring out at that point, I think you get the best of both worlds because you get that satisfaction of knowing him a bit, seeing them interact directly with him and their relationships individually and together. And then back to the reality of the situation where, just cutting with the heart monitor, the flat.
Well, there's two things like in terms of what kicks it off is, Christina's buttoning his shirt, and all of a sudden the button comes off and it's in her hand, right? And that was something that I remember talking to Lizzie, like that happened when I was buttoning a parent's shirt and the button came off, and I was like, wow, this is the most symbolic thing. Like it just something's coming apart at the seams. Like this is truly symbolic in that almost like a, ridiculous way, right? A ludicrous way. It was so perfectly embodied what I was witnessing. And that kicks it off. Like the idea, I mean, maybe they don't bring him out. Maybe that's where the fantasy starts. But in my mind, it was always like she's buttoning up. She sees this. She looks at him. He looks at her. And suddenly there's this window that we go into. So it is playing with this idea that it's for them, that in some version of this, like this film world, that the sister's getting to hear this, but it's truly for the father and it's truly for us. And it really had to, in terms of like the cut, we had to stay in it long enough that we could let go of like, oh wait, this is not happening. This is no way is this really happening. And then just sink into the story in the way that the sisters do and forget about like, oh yeah, this probably is not happening, but just live in it long enough. And then suddenly we're out of it.
Yeah, well, it was so subtle and graceful that it never felt like a stunt or anything, or felt like it wasn't earned to me. So I thought that was, I don't know, a real testament to your control of that whole situation. I also, like I was saying, like I loved that. I mean, I don't know. To me, it felt like it was like their collective fantasy. Would you interpret it that way, or?
It was interesting. It was one of those scenes too, shooting in order, getting to that at the very end of the film, having a new actor come in. Like they had, by that point, the three of them were so close with each other, like they really had gotten so intertwined. Like they were just, there was no, like I said, there was no room for them to escape to. So they're constantly like going off to a room together while we were doing something or just hanging out with the crew, but they had become truly connected in this other way. So having that intrusion, I could see for the actors themselves, like having this experience was important for them. Like standing, it's the only time they all share a frame together, right? Oh. It's the only time that we suddenly find them standing until the very end on the sofa, So it's like them taking a seat as he takes a seat on the windowsill. That happens during rehearsal where they just gravitated to like this kind of bedtime story situation, which probably never happened in their childhood, but it just kind of dictated the way that we were framing and setting up things. And so it all kind of worked. And if it wasn't for these characters, it was definitely for these actors.
And you could have, and it seems like if you weren't shooting in sequence, it would have been so much harder to come to that, right?
Yeah. Not only that, I've heard them talk about it, and Lizzie talks about just Natasha. Like I had the three of them in the script that they sit on the sofa and that she sings this song, and that they're kind of leaning against, Christina. I like this idea that like Christina is kind of the thing that they're criticizing, right? That she's constantly bringing up being a mom. And like suddenly that's like a superpower that she's able to cling to something that's comforted her daughter now for her own sisters. But Natasha putting, her head on the lap and Carrie leaning so deep into her, and then Lizzie brushing Natasha's hair in that way, like that's just something that it's not going to happen on day 3, right? It's just not going to happen. There was a comfort that built that I felt like only would have happened because of shooting in order.
Yeah. And then, and like with for me, everything throughout the film, there was like not a single false note, and it was able to all kind of evolve naturally because of that. So,
yeah, it was, so much of this came out of an urgency and just like a self need, which I don't think is a bad thing. Like I needed to feel like a sense of this control where I was able to go into the edit room, stay in there for as long as I needed, which wasn't a ton of time, but I never felt an outside pressure at all. And, it was kind of like an incredible, ideal way of working, but it felt felt needed.
That's great. Well, it made for such a beautiful film. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up now. But can you tell us when it'll be out?
Yes. First off, it's out in theaters right now, and we just saw it so beautiful. There's a print of it that we were able to make, which was thanks to Netflix on so many levels. They've just been incredible to partners on this film. But it's out in limited release right now, and then it comes out streaming on this September 20th worldwide. So we'll see what that is.
Cool.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.